Welcome to this tutorial that will show you the traditional method for subtraction that's good for larger numbers and for large decimal numbers. You need to have a good understanding of the value of all the digits in the number and be comfortable with borrowing by using a more expanded method. If you feel that you're ready for this, away we go. Here we have the same subtraction set out in two different ways. It's 372 subtract 138. The top method is an expanded method that you might have seen in another tutorial, and we'll just go through it really quickly. If I start with the units, I see that I can't subtract 2 from 8, so I need to borrow from the tens. I do this by crossing the 70 out, replacing it with 60 and transferring a 10 to make the 2 into a 12. I can then subtract 8 from the 12, which will leave me with 4 units. Now, I can then subtract 30 from 60. That'll leave me with 30. I can subtract 100 from the 300, which will leave me with 200. So, when I bring my final answer back to the original starting point, I will have 234. Now, we'll show you how this looks in the compact traditional layout, which is below. Once again, we've got 372 take away 138. I can't take 8 away from 2, so I need to borrow a 10 from the 70. So I cross the 7 of the 70 out, and I'm left with the 60, which is represented with that 6. I've got 12 in the units that I can then subtract 8 from, which will leave me with the 4. And then it's straightforward. I can take 30 from 60, which will leave me with 30, and I can take the 100 from the 300, which will leave me with 200. And you can see that we have arrived at the same answer regardless of the method. If you're feeling confident, you can pause this video now or continue watching, and we'll demonstrate how to subtract from thousands and to subtract decimal numbers. Let's look at 2,181 subtracting 1,336. Straight away, I can't subtract 6 from the 1, so I need to borrow from the 80, and that'll leave me with 70, and I've got now 11 in the units column. I can take 6 away from 11, which will leave me with 5. I can then subtract 30 from 70, which will leave me with 40, or the 4 there. I cannot subtract 300 from 100, so I need to borrow 1,000 from the thousands column. So I'll cross out the 2,000 and replace it with 1,000, and then I bring 1,000 over to the hundreds column, which means I've got 1,100 that I can subtract 300 from. And that will leave me with 800, and then I subtract 1,000 from 1,000, and I'll have nothing left. So I won't put the 0 there. My answer will be 845. Let's go over now to the decimal number. 44.29 subtract 27.65. I can take the 500ths away from the 900ths. That will leave me with 400ths. I can't take 6/10ths away from the 2/10ths, so I need to borrow a unit. I'll cross out the 4, replace it with a 3, and carry 10/10ths, or 12/10ths altogether for the tenths column. And then I can subtract 6/10ths from 12/10ths, leaving me with 6/10ths. I can't subtract 7 away from 3, so I need to borrow from the tens column. I'll take 10 away from the 40, leaving me with 30, and then I've got 13 to subtract 7 from. That will leave me with 6, and then I can subtract 20 from 30, which will leave me with 16. And my final answer will be 16.64, nice and multicoloured. Now you should pause this video and have a go at answering these 6 subtractions that gets progressively more difficult, and keep an eye on the final decimal where there are no hundredths in the top number. What's she going to do about that? Away you go. Here are your answers. The first one's straightforward enough. One borrow will lead you to 266 as your answer. Going along to 823 subtract 645, you should have 178. You need to make sure that you borrow from the tens to make 13 to subtract 5 from. And then you've got, as you can see there, 11 tens or 110 to subtract 40 from if you borrow from the hundreds. It's a little tricky, that one, but hopefully you've got it. 3,186 subtract 1,544 will give you 1,642 with just a simple borrowing from the thousands to the hundreds. 8,711 required 2 borrowings to compensate for the lack of power in the tens and the units, but you should end up with 6,143. And the fifth question, middle on the bottom row, 1 borrowing from the tens to the units should give you 66.41. Now let's look at the final decimal subtraction. You've got 17.4 subtracting 9.26, and you need to make sure when you do set this out that you set it out accurately in the columns. There is nothing in the hundredths column, so I need to borrow from the tenths. I'll be left with 3 tenths here, and then I've got 10 hundredths here. If I subtract 6 hundredths from 10 hundredths, I'll be left with 4 hundredths. I can subtract 2 tenths from 3 tenths, leaving me with 1 tenth. And then if I just think of 17 subtract 9, I should be left with 8.14. That's the end of this tutorial. If you've got all of those right, well done. They were tricky questions for you to try out, but well done if you've got all of them correct. If not, let's have a look at your work and see if we can see what has gone not quite right. Otherwise, good job, well done.